Hi guys, in this video I'm going to go through logging and how you can keep track of the actions in a workbook. But before we do that, go to Excel VBA check out over 10 hours of video. More videos are being added all the time. You could go here and put your email in and you could be emailed when a new free video gets uploaded. Contact me here, and this is also the site where you can download all of the working workbooks. Okay, so um, a lot of times you're going to make a macro and um, you want to know, when someone runs the macro, or when is the workbook open, or how often is it used, and things like that. So what you can do, and this should be a pretty short video, is you could create a file on your desktop, and I just created a file like this, logging. This is a folder called logging. If I click into it, it's empty right now, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to Notepad, and I'm just going to double click on that and save a file here called Excel log.txt in the logging folder. Click save. So now I have in this logging folder, I have a text file, not an Excel file, a text file called Excel log. And what I want to do is I want to keep track of when this workbook is opened and closed. And I want to have a log of it. So I don't want a worksheet. I don't want to make a tab or anything. I just want a log to know when it's open and closed. So it's really easy to do. We just go into a module. So this is in a module, and I'm just going to call this sub log. And what I want to do is I want to be able to pass in a parameter to this function and call it log message as string. And this is the message I want to record when the workbook opens. So what I'm going to do here is just do this. Open, and then I pasted in the path of that text file. Okay. And when you put this open statement in, you got to put for append as, I'm just going to put number 1. So what is this line doing? Well, all it's saying is I want to open this file, this text file, and open it using this keyword. That's how it knows it wants to open it. And this for append means I want to append data to this file. So it's just Microsoft Excel. It has this keyword structure that if you put for append after a file in this way, it knows that you want to append data to it. And then this as number 1 is sort of an alias, meaning you could have put anything here. It could be dog. Actually, it has to be pound. But it's just an alias for this whole file. Okay. So now all you have to do is, once this file opens, and it's going to know that it's going to append data, and append meaning it's going to put data on the end of the file, you just do this, print, and then you do #1, comma, log message. So what this line does is it prints the message in the file. In the last line, it's gonna print whatever in this message, which is going to be passed in into this file. And notice that I'm using the alias. So I'm saying print this message in this file, and that's just a structure. It's not easily readable. It doesn't say print log message number 1. It says print in this file, and this file here is this alias, and that's what this as number 1 is. This as number 1 is sort of saying, okay, give me another name for this whole big thing here. And I just said number 1. Okay. So next, all you need to do is close the file, and that's all that does. Close number 1. Okay. So that's pretty much all you need here. And let's test it. So let's do subtest, and let's do log. Let's see. I'm going to put opened at and now. Okay, so if I run this, it just executed and it didn't open up a new screen or anything because it happened real fast. But if I go to that file and I double click on it, here is in the text file, I have that message that I just saw in the code here. Okay, so how do we make this happen when it opens and closes? Well, we're going to use the Microsoft Excel events, and so I got rid of that sub. I'm just going to cut this, and I'm go to this workbook. I go to this workbook, and this has been in some other videos, but you go to this workbook, and then you go to this drop-down list, and you go to workbook, and automatically you see private sub workbook open, and I'm just going to write that log opened at, right? And now I want to do something when the workbook closes, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to go up here and say before close, and I'm just going to paste this in again and say closed at. Okay, so now we can get out of this and save it. So I'm just going to save this on my desktop in that logging folder as a Microsoft Excel macro enabled workbook. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to close it, and right when it closed, if I open it again, you see that it did account for that, right? So here is opened at, closed at, right? Now if I close this again and I open it, and then I go to the file again, there's the latest opening of the workbook. Okay, so you can see what's happening here is that I wrote that subroutine. I wrote this subroutine, and I allowed it to pass in a parameter. Okay, and what this subroutine does is it opens that text file, and it prints whatever message is passed in, and then it closes that text file. And then I went to this workbook, and I chose workbook up here, and in the workbook open, I just called that subroutine and said when it opens, write opened at and now, where now is going to be your date, and it's going to be your time with the second and the AM PM. And then I did the same thing here, and I said before close. Okay. Oh, where's that at? Up here. And then in the close event, in the workbook close event, remember these are events. In the close event, I called it again. I said call this subroutine and pass in the message closed at and the date and time. Okay, so this logging is pretty interesting because now you have a separate file. Now let me just close this workbook again. You have a separate file that will track things that are happening in your workbook, and they can track when it's opened or when it's closed. Let's see if we can go one step further here, and I'm not sure if this is possible. I'm going to go in here. Let me just do x is equal to location. So here's something interesting, is that if I step through this, if I do application.username, let me actually go into subtest. If I just do this, and I put a watch on what is X here. So I have a username on my computer of T. Okay, now this is a abbreviation for my middle name, and it's my username. Okay, so on your computer, this is interesting now, because if you put this file on a network drive or something, and multiple people are accessing this, well, now you can keep track of who is accessing it. And I'm going to just cut this, and I'm going to get rid of this sub. I'm just going to go back to this workbook, and I'm going to say opened at I'm just going to append to this. I'm going to put by, and I'm going to put the name of the user who accessed the file, who is accessing the file. So now you have something that's more useful, because if I run this now, if I close this workbook and I go into the Excel log, now I have this bit of information that says this workbook was closed at this time by this user. And that's pretty interesting, because then you can get a feel for who's using your application and things like that. How often are they accessing it? Who is accessing it? At what times are they accessing it? So you could start to really understand more about the usage of your application. And it's good because it's a separate text file. It's real easy too, because if you notice, that little bit of code is very easy to write. You don't need to create any objects or anything. You just do open the file as append, or for append as an alias. As I said before, you could put something else here. I just did number one. It could be any alias you want. And then you just put the message there. And again, this is interesting because you could call that logging when any of this stuff happens. So, for instance, if you have a workbook where you don't want any new sheets added, well, you can call this thing, and we could do this. We could do this. So this workbook new sheet, whenever I add a new sheet now, if I close this and I add a new sheet, and then I close this, let's look in here. I have this bit of code, right? New sheet added by T. Well, if you don't want any sheets added, you could constrict that with locking the workbook and putting security on it. But here's another way to do it, right? You can keep track of what's going on in your macros by adding this logging functionality. And it's also good because if you have a very large macro, let's say you have this, I'm just going to call it large macro, and let's say it has 1,000 lines of code, and at certain points in there you want to find out what the value of variables are, or what's happening. Well, then you just call log and you put in something, right? So you could put it in macros as well. It doesn't have to go into events, only events like this. It can go into your modules, and it could go into macros. And if I run this now, I'll put macro was run at now. So if I run this now, I gotta go into it, and then I close it. here you have this macro was run, right? So now you're getting tons and tons of information all in this Excel log file, which is very useful because you can see who's accessing it by using that application.username. You could see when they're opening it, when they're closing it, any events that are happening, like new sheets are added or whatever. I mean, you could do whatever you want to find out what's happening in your Excel file. So what are the key takeaways from this video? I'm just going to wrap up now. Key takeaways are: put a text file in a folder, call it whatever you want, and then in your Microsoft Excel workbook, create a macro that does this. It opens the text file, it prints something to it, and then it'll close it. And then just call it wherever you want, whether it's in a macro or in a loop or at any one of these events that you see here. And the final tip is, put the time by using now, and also put the username by doing application.username. And if you do that, I think you'll get some good information and it'll be useful for you. Okay, so just a reminder, go to excelvbasequel.com again. Watch all these videos. What I'm going to do is upload all those files that you just saw to this website, and you could download them. You could also watch the videos for free. Put in your email for future videos, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.